Raw Takes with Andrew Hody. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and check out the show on social media. All the links are in the description below, so make sure to check out Raw Takes with Andrew Hody on other platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and you can follow me at Hody Andrew on X. Hope everyone had a great week. Hope everyone enjoyed the draft. Hope everyone's enjoying how their NBA team is doing, how baseball is kind of in full swing now going into the month of April. But we're going to cut to the chase and get right to the NFL draft to start things off. And the reason I really want to talk about the NFL draft, obviously, not just because it was this weekend, but because there was a big story with Shedeur Sanders. He fell all the way to the Cleveland Browns in the 5th round of the draft. And my thoughts on that for the Browns are we'll wait and see for the moment. I'll give some in-depth analysis since I'm a Browns fan about that here in just a few minutes. I just want to start talking about accountability for sports media. I'm not even talking about NFL teams for passing on Shedeur Sanders. NFL teams do their job. They draft the guys they think are going to help them win games. That's what the NFL teams do. That's what NFL executives do. That's what NFL coaches do. That's what NFL GMs do. That's what NFL owners do. They draft the guys they think are going to win games. We've seen players drop in the draft before. Not necessarily significant as Shedeur Sanders, but we've seen them drop before. It's happened. This was kind of a free-for-all. So is this more so on NFL executives, or is this more so on the sports media hyping this guy up? Because not only was the sports media overanalyzing Shedeur Sanders, in my opinion, and maybe that was because of his last name Sanders, maybe that was because of some of the plays he made at Colorado against who I think was far less superior competition than anyone in the AP Top 25, and that Colorado didn't belong, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Why did the media overanalyze Shedeur Sanders? Why did he have to go number 2 overall? And then the media is not only, a lot of pundits in the media, I don't want to just say, there's probably some people that agree with me or not, and I need to hold myself accountable here. I came on this podcast and talked about how I think the Browns should consider drafting Shedeur Sanders because they need a quarterback. I did it. But you know what? I wasn't a huge fan of Shedeur. I said kind of that out of desperation because the Browns need a quarterback. Having said that, though, I have to hold myself accountable here, too. But pundits like Stephen A. Smith, Mel Kiper Jr., Ian Rappaport, I've seen them all kind of, and a lot of them are good at their jobs. Ian Rappaport especially, very good at his job. I'm not taking that away from some folks, and you're allowed to have opinions. Sports talk in general is about opinions. It's about thoughts. It's about what you think is going to happen. It's about predictions. It's not necessarily about you know what's going to happen, because you truly don't know what's going to happen until the players step on the field. But you could predict things. You could think things. You can give your opinions out. That's what sports talk is all about. That's what it's all about. But in terms of the national limelight for this Shedeur story of him dropping all the way to the 5th round, no, it's not a big deal he dropped all the way to the 5th round. It isn't. He was overanalyzed by the pundits. He was. I'm sorry to say that. Mel Kiper screaming everybody out in the NFL over the weekend about how nobody took him in the 1st and 2nd round. Whatever, Mel Kiper Jr. You're not an NFL executive, are you? I'm not an NFL executive. I don't choose exactly what these teams go and do. I could give my thoughts on what they should do, but at the end of the day, that's gobbledygook to all these NFL franchises. They're looking for winners. That's what the NFL is all about. They're doing that. They're the real experts. They're not getting on microphones every day and talking to their audiences about this kind of stuff. Look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're the best at it. They don't get behind microphones and talk about their team, what's going on, why they're not firing Coach Tomlin, why they're not drafting X quarterback, why they're not drafting X running back. The Steelers don't do that. That's all between closed doors. They know as an organization how to handle that. They do. And they did draft Will Howard over the weekend. But still, like what I'm saying is, the Pittsburgh Steelers executives aren't getting behind a microphone and giving their opinions out on what's going to happen with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're just not doing that. They're not that kind of organization. The Cleveland Browns aren't doing that either. The San Francisco 49ers aren't doing that. The Seattle Seahawks aren't doing that. The Denver Broncos aren't doing that. Their job is just to evaluate talent and draft. That's what they're doing. Our job as sports commentators is to give our thoughts and opinions. And I will be openly honest as a sports commentator. I don't exactly know what's going to happen with every NFL team. I don't. I've been out on Caleb Williams, for example, in the draft. I still think Caleb Williams is going to be a bust. Granted, the Chicago Bears could go 13-4 this year, and I have no idea yet. I mean, I have to be honest about that. And if that happens, I'll eat my words and say I was wrong. The media needs to do the same thing here. People like Mel Kiper Jr., like Stephen A. Smith, like these pundits that come on and complain about Shedeur Sanders dropping, how about you over-evaluated the guy? He wasn't a first-round pick. You look at Colorado's schedule. They didn't play the Oregons. They didn't play the Ohio States. They didn't play the Alabamas or the Texases of the world. They didn't play the SMUs of the world. Who did they play? They played non-ranked opponents. They played one ranked opponent, lost that game, by the way. 9-3 overall. Good record, great story. Don't want to take that away from Colorado. They were 1-11 a few years ago, and now they're 9-3. Bravo. I want to give props. I love Deion Sanders personally. Think he's a great coach, a great motivator. Love it. Love the story of Colorado. However, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get generational talent out of that. I think Travis Hunter is going to be an extreme talent. I will say that. I think Travis Hunter was a first-round guy to draft. I still think Travis Hunter has some diva traits that I don't necessarily know are going to pan out in the NFL for the long term. So I think the Jacksonville Jaguars have to be cautious of that. And they did trade away kind of a haul to go get him. So that's on Jacksonville. I think Cleveland could necessarily reap the benefit of the doubt when it comes to all that. But you know what? That's all fine and good. But when it comes to Shedeur Sanders, yes, he fell all the way to the 5th round. Who cares? We haven't played a snap of football yet. Shedeur Sanders could be a complete bust, or he could be the greatest thing since Tom Brady. We have no idea. We have no idea. He has to play football before we can officially make an opinion on Shedeur Sanders. So I want to emphasize that. But he didn't conduct himself well in the draft process, and I think that made teams hesitant. I really think so. And because he didn't handle himself well in the draft process, I think that affected his stock. And instead of the pundits calling Shedeur Sanders out for it or changing up their draft picks, and heck, I was one of them. I definitely didn't pay too much attention to that and said Shedeur Sanders should probably go to the Cleveland Browns at a higher rate because the Browns need a quarterback. So I'm going to hold myself accountable to it. That doesn't mean he should have gone in the first round. It just doesn't. And clearly the NFL saw that. The NFL executives definitely know more about football than anybody on any of the major networks, than anybody who's in some room in his house doing a podcast like myself. They're the pros for a reason. And yeah, sometimes they look like fools. A lot of times they look like fools. Look at the 1-31 Browns. Look at the 0-16 Lions. Look at the Denver Broncos, who until now were a laughingstock for 10 years. I mean, people make fools of themselves in the NFL. It happens every single season. You're going to have good teams. You're going to have bad teams. But for the pundits to get overly aggressive and angry at NFL executives because they didn't take Shedeur Sanders in the 1st or 2nd round or the 3rd round or the 4th round and they fell all the way down, kick rocks. You know how many times you've been wrong? I can even admit how many times I've been wrong, and I'm in sports media. The business of forecasting is sports media. Admit you were wrong. Admit we over-evaluated Shedeur Sanders. I'm willing to admit it. I over-evaluated Shedeur Sanders. Things did work out. He did end up going to the Cleveland Browns. I'm not so sure I was a fan of it to begin with, and I'll talk about that here in a second. But still, we over-evaluated Shedeur Sanders, and the sports media realm needs to hold themselves accountable. Don't blame NFL executives. If Shedeur Sanders ends up being a star quarterback, then yes, you could blame NFL executives because everyone passed on him. And the media was right. But still, the media needs to realize they over-evaluated him in terms of the draft. Okay? So hold yourselves accountable there. If Shedeur Sanders is the biggest bust since sliced bread, then the media needs to eat their words. I'll have to eat my words. I already am eating my words, okay? And I regret some of the things I said about Shedeur Sanders being a first-round draft grade. I was wrong. I was wrong. And heck, he may pan out to be a guy who ends up looking like a first-round pick. You don't know till they play football. So we don't know. We just do not know. We're in the business of forecasting, the business of predictions, and we don't necessarily know until you see it on the field. So I'm calling everybody in sports media out. Don't blame NFL executives until football actually starts to get played. Blame yourselves to picking Shedeur Sanders going number 2, number 5, number 15, or falling to the 2nd round, falling to the 3rd round. Blame yourselves. Hold yourselves accountable. You were wrong. I was wrong. We were wrong as a collective to evaluate Shedeur Sanders that high. We were all wrong, and we all look like fools, and everybody publicly knows that. Everybody. There's nothing to hide. If you pay attention to sports talk media, you know it. You know who was wrong. I know the pundits who are wrong. I know I was wrong. I'm holding myself accountable. How about the rest of us do that? We were wrong on Shedeur Sanders and where he was going to get drafted. I guess maybe not necessarily to whom he was going to get drafted, which I'll get into now. The Browns taking Shedeur Sanders in the 5th round, and then they also took Dillon Gabriel in the 3rd, so that kind of makes the Shedeur Sanders pick look questionable. The Browns also have 2 quarterbacks they got during the offseason in Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett, and obviously Deshaun Watson's on the roster. Not expected to play, of course, not just because he was a disaster, but also because he was injured. So, let's get right to it and this pick. I wanted the Browns to draft him much higher, as you remember in my prior podcast, but that was more so out of desperation. The Browns needed a quarterback. They had to go get a quarterback. They just got 2 of them. Either one could pan out. We don't know until the football season starts. They're going to be learning under Joe Flacco, though, and Joe Flacco, I don't think is coming in here to be a mentor. He's here to play football, but having said that, you're going to be learning from a pro and someone who's a Super Bowl MVP at one point, who's had some tremendous seasons in the past, who is now officially beloved in Cleveland, Ohio. It's a good guy to learn from, Joe Flacco. I will say that right off the rip, and he fits well in Kevin Stefanski's offense. We'll see how that all pans out if the Browns are even remotely competitive this year, which I still think is a possibility because they have a lot of great talent. But it's still a weird move to draft 2 quarterbacks and not really necessarily know which direction you're going to go. So I think that is kind of unique on the Browns' part. I will say this, I like Mason Graham. I like Quinshon Judkins. I think those are solid picks by the Browns, and I think they're going to be impactful players. The quarterback situation, I'm not so necessarily sure I'm a huge fan of, but before I even move forward, let's just think about this for a second. The Browns just got a haul from the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're going to have their 1st-round pick next year. That could possibly be a trade asset if you need a quarterback next year. Let's say they figure out that Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur aren't the guy, so they need to go up and draft a guy next year. Now you have the assets to do so. The Browns essentially set themselves up for 2026 and beyond. But there's also the possibility you may have the guy of one of these 2 guys. You don't know until you start playing football, and seeing that Shedeur Sanders was evaluated so high and fell so low, you got him at a cheap price. If he ends up being the guy, if he ends up fitting in Kevin Stefanski's system, if he ends up being a guy you want to take into 2026 and not go the quarterback route because Shedeur Sanders wins you a bunch of games at the end of the year, or however that pans out being, then the Browns essentially could be geniuses. This move could be ingenious by the Browns. It could also be a disaster. Either way, they're set up for 2026. So no matter how this season pans out, I think the Browns are kind of in good shape here for the long term. The short term, I don't necessarily know. I think there's still a lot of questions to be answered. Obviously, now that you have the running backs on the roster, are we sure that Nick Chubb is going to be staying with the Browns another season? And would he even be the Nick Chubb of old again? I still think Nick Chubb kind of got a bad rap if this is the case by the Cleveland Browns. I still would like them to sign Nick Chubb. Think it's for the best for the organization and for the fan base right now, especially given that the Browns aren't expected to be very competitive. I think you have Myles Garrett locked up for the long term. That's obviously a move to try to win in the long term. You don't lock up Myles Garrett and try to get assets for him if you're locking him up and keeping him here in Cleveland on contract. So Myles Garrett, obviously, keeping him here clearly says the Browns, to me, are committed to winning in the future and long term. David Njoku's still here. You still got him on a deal. Want to get the best out of him. You have Jerry Jeudy, who I think is going to be a great wide receiver target for no matter who plays quarterback this year. He proved himself last year despite the Browns being 3-14. And the defense is still pretty loaded and stacked. Can JOK, after he comes back from injury, be the JOK we saw the last few years? I think it's possible. So to me, there's a lot here in Cleveland that could build a successful team. It's just going to be a matter of who's that guy going to be under center playing quarterback. It's not going to be Joe Flacco long term. I think we all know that. It's not going to be Kenny Pickett long term. I think we know that. Could it be Shedeur Sanders? Could it be Dillon Gabriel? Could it be either one? Do I think it'll be either one? I don't. I really, really don't. The reason I wanted the Browns to take Shedeur Sanders, as I mentioned, was out of desperation. That might not necessarily be the right move, but the fact they got him so cheap, the fact they got him so cheap, that means me to believe, what is there to lose now? Might as well take the guy, see what he's got in the tank, and if he ends up being an absolute bust, which is possible, then everybody in the media needs to eat their words again for saying he deserved a first-round draft grade. Including me. Including me. I'm holding myself accountable when it comes to this Shedeur Sanders stuff too. But the rest of the sports media world needs to do the same thing, and I'm going to continue to emphasize that. So having said that, that's my thoughts on where the Browns currently stand. In terms of where Jacksonville stands, I think Jacksonville gave up a little bit too much to draft Travis Hunter, because I personally think down the line Travis Hunter is going to be a locker room problem. And the reason I think he's going to be a locker room problem is because I could see kind of that Odell Beckham Jr., Antonio Brown, diva-style side in him. He seems to be a little full of himself, and it kind of rubs me the wrong way. I think he's an extraordinary talent. I think he could do both ends of the football, but I don't think Travis Hunter, by any stretch, is going to be a guy that's quiet in the locker room. And I'm just going to emphasize that right off the rip. That concerns me a little bit. And it doesn't necessarily concern me for Trevor Lawrence. He's a grown-up. I think Trevor Lawrence is a good leader and can keep things under control there. The guys won a playoff game. Yeah, the Jacksonville Jaguars have kind of underachieved the last few seasons. I actually think that's all apples and oranges at this point. I think they're going to turn things around a little bit. And I think Travis Hunter is going to help them do so. He has the potential to be a really impactful player on either side of the football. I think you need to pick if he's going to be either a wide receiver or a corner and go from there. But having said that, if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, you have Travis Hunter now at your disposal. He's going to have an ego. I'm very confident that's going to be the case. And I think down the line, that's going to be a problem for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But if he ends up being an extraordinary talent the next few years and Trevor Lawrence can be the grown-up in the room and keep that under control, then I think the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be just fine. Travis Hunter, though, extraordinary talent, but I see that diva potential in him. I don't see him as a Calvin Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald kind of guy. Calvin Johnson and Larry Fitzgerald, what they do, they got back to work and played their asses off. They weren't divas on the field. Everybody loves both of them. I see more Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham Jr. in a guy like Travis Hunter. I just do. I don't see the Calvin Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald in him. I see it the other way around. So I think that could be concerning. Granted, I could be absolutely wrong. I think Travis Hunter's got some diva in him, though. And if I'm the Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm a little bit concerned about that. But maybe the kid could grow up. He's still a kid, so I'm not going to go on him too much for that. I could be absolutely wrong. I think Travis Hunter's very, very talented, and I think he's got potential to be a great wide receiver in the league. But that diva potential, I see it in him, and it kind of concerns me. It really does. There was a reason I didn't want the Browns to trade for Odell Beckham Jr., and it's because I saw there was a little bit of an egotistical side to him, and I didn't like it, and I ended up being right. I predicted that they shouldn't have done it, and I was right. Doesn't mean, it could have gone the other way around, and I could have been wrong, but it didn't. So that goes back to my sports media take again from earlier in the show, but that's where we'll leave it. So the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think, got a little bit of a haul, gave up a little bit of a haul for a possible locker room problem, but overall, can he produce on the field? I think he will be able to do so. Cam Ward to Tennessee. Cam Ward, I think, is going to be an extraordinary quarterback in the NFL within time. He's going to get beat up his first couple of years with the Tennessee Titans just because they themselves aren't a really good football team right now. But I think Brian Callahan has the potential to build a good offense. We know he came from a good offensive system when he was with Cincinnati. He has a great offensive line coach in his dad, who's probably going to be able to make a lot out of nothing. So if you're Cam Ward, I think you're in a better situation than maybe one may think. But Tennessee's still not a very good team, and it's going to take time for the Titans to really build a good team around a guy like Cam Ward before we could say he really elevates the Tennessee Titans to the next level. But I think Cam Ward's an extraordinary talent. Out of all the quarterbacks in this draft, he was my favorite. So I think Cam Ward, within time, is going to be a really, really good NFL quarterback. Jackson Dart, and this was interesting to me. The Giants, I think, could have let Jackson Dart fall to them, but they ended up trading up to the first round to get him. And hey, if you think you have the guy, props to you. Trade up and go get the guy. Jackson Dart's going to be learning under two, I think, good veterans, Russell Wilson in particular. Jameis Winston, outside of turning the football over, I still think is a good guy to have in your locker room. And so I think that'll be good for Jackson Dart. To learn from those two guys, obviously you don't want to learn from Jameis's turnovers, but I think the New York Giants possibly set themselves up, and they have Abdul Carter now on the defensive end. They have some good talented players in New York. It's still going to be a challenge for them because they have to compete with teams like the Eagles and the Commanders now, but the Giants could set themselves off for a really good future here. But if you're a guy like Brian Dable, there is no future. You got to win now. And so I think if you're the Giants, you set yourself up to have Jackson Dart possibly take over, but you got to find ways to win football games now. And I don't think Jackson Dart is going to be that guy. So a good thing is you have two quarterbacks in that room that I think are pretty well NFL experienced and can win you games, at least win you a few games before they turn the ball over a little bit. Like Jameis Russell, I think can definitely win you some games still in the NFL. But the Giants are still kind of in a rebuilding process. But if Dable is as good as a coach as I think he is, I think he could make it work somehow. And I think Jackson Dart is kind of getting lucky with a guy like Brian Dable being his head coach. I like Brian Dable personally. I think it's been a tough situation with the Giants that I don't necessarily put all on him, but the pressure is going to be on Brian Dable this season to win some football games. So Jackson Dart getting taken at 27, I think that's definitely a good move. I really do. Will Howard going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Does that really concern me? Not really. The Pittsburgh Steelers to me have shown me nothing in terms of really gravitating towards finding the big quarterback they think is going to be the future. And maybe they don't think it's in this draft, which is why they let Will Howard fall to them. And Will Howard could pan out. I mean, I don't know if he will, though. This draft class was still kind of weak to me. I'm not even so sure I believe in Jackson Dart that much. I believe in Cam Ward out of all these guys. I don't know if I believe in Jackson Dart or Will Howard or Shedeur Sanders, or I definitely don't believe in Dylan Gabriel. So, to me, I think Pittsburgh drafting Will Howard probably couldn't have gone to a better team than Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh, we know the culture they bring. But Pittsburgh couldn't do much about Kenny Pickett. The defense was winning them games. So Mike Tomlin may be in a position, again, where he has to rely heavily on the Pittsburgh Steelers' steel curtain defense until they figure out what's going to happen with the offense. And maybe that's a guy Arthur Smith thinks he could really work with and turn around and coach him up to be really good. Arthur Smith looked like he was going to be a great offensive coordinator hire, and I'll be honest with you, I have yet to see that from the Steelers. I really do. I think he has been a tremendous offensive coordinator in the past. He obviously, I think, knows how to work with a really good running game, but I don't know if Arthur Smith was necessarily the right hire for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But if he's the good offensive coordinator I believe he can be, I think he can make Will Howard do something in the NFL. And if there's any team that could take nothing into something and make it good, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. We've seen them do it time and time again. Doesn't mean it's going to result in a playoff win, though, and I know that's what the Steeler fan expectation is right now. And I'll say this again, I don't think you're going to be going anywhere with Mike Tomlin. I mean, in terms of this, I don't think Mike Tomlin's going anywhere. And I think the Steelers are right to keep him as the head coach, because they know as good as anybody that if Mike Tomlin were to go anywhere else, he would be probably a really, really good head coach. And I think the Steelers know that, and that's why they're kind of keeping him locked in. So, yeah, if you're a Pittsburgh fan, probably root for a disastrous season if you want Mike Tomlin gone. If not, then expect Mike Tomlin to stay as he should. Everyone in Cleveland would love to have him as their head coach. We would. I like Stefanski, though, but, we would like to have Mike Tomlin if you guys don't want him. I'm just saying that off the record. All right, let's move on to the NBA. The NFL draft, crazy. If you have any thoughts and opinions, please leave a comment for me, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. The NBA, though, we know 4 of the teams that have advanced in the playoffs. Oklahoma City sweeping Memphis. And there were some really close games the Grizzlies put up there, but the OKC Thunder were just way too good. And because of that, the Memphis Grizzlies got swept. Their season's over. But I think they can exit the postseason knowing they really put up a good series against the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think Memphis deserves a lot of props for playing them as close as they did. I don't know if the Miami Heat could say that about the Cleveland Cavaliers, especially after Game 4. Now let's say this for the record. I've never seen a Miami Heat team go into a playoff game playing that bad. An Eric Spoelstra coached team. A Pat Riley put together team. I've never in my life seen a Miami Heat team go out on the floor and play like that in a closeout game. We had guys like Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo talking about the stars of the Heat. The 2 good players I think they have and could possibly build around if they get another star. I think those are 2 good pieces in Miami. But they were talking about how the series, they're not going to let it just end in 4. That they weren't. That the series was not over yet. How do you lose by 55 points? How do you let the Cleveland Cavaliers almost clinch the record for most points against a team in the playoffs? The most points, the margin of victory, I guess the best way to put it, the margin of victory Almost got it. 58 was the margin of victory. It was 55, and they led by 60 at one point. How do you let the Cleveland Cavaliers do that to you on your home floor? I mean, I literally remember I got home, I was getting ice cream real quick, and it was 30-8. It was 30-8. Then I got home and watched the rest of the game transpire, and it was 72-33 at the half. Every Cleveland Cavalier fan was pumping their fist in the air. And listen, the Cavs were tremendous in this series. Their offense looks unstoppable. I think the Cavs are contending for the finals this year. I definitely think they're going to make the Boston Celtics series a living nightmare, even if they don't win that series. I think the Cleveland Cavaliers are on their road to make a really, really good run here. But having said that, I don't necessarily know if I give the Cavs any favors here with their first-round opponent. The Miami Heat, I expected to put pressure on the Cavs. I expected them to have that Heat culture. I expected them to be coached up, ready to play, and ready to fight. The Heat were a joke on their home floor. They fought in Game 2. Give them Game 2. They fought in Game 2 to try to win that game. They just didn't end up doing it. Game 1, the Cavs just kind of outclassed and outmatched them. But, you know, the Heat at least were somewhat in that game. I mean, they really weren't. They lost by 21 points. But in Games 1 and 2, the Heat were somewhat in Game 1, and then they were all in on Game 2. And then on their home floor in front of their fans, they embarrassed themselves back-to-back. They embarrassed themselves in Game 3 by 37 points. They humiliated themselves in Game 4 on their home floor. And this is the Heat culture. This is the Pat Riley, the Eric Spoelstra. This is what the Miami Heat gave us. And so, as a Cavs fan, am I optimistic about the Cavs in this series? Sure. They offensively were terrific. They were playing great defense. They locked in the Miami Heat. Maybe they broke Miami Heat culture. I don't know. But I don't blame the Cleveland Cavaliers for this series win as much as I blame the Miami Heat for this series loss. That was a joke from an organization that's known for being one of the best in pro sports, that do things the right way, that coach things the right way, that collect the right players. And listen, the season was a roller coaster. I get it. The Jimmy Butler emotions, high and low. You weren't going to win a finals this year. You weren't really going to be contending in the playoffs. But you could give that Miami Heat fighting effort. You were a 10 seed and fought your way to the playoffs. You did it in the play-in tournament. You could have given the Cavs some fight on your home floor. You did in Games 1 and 2. Game 2 especially. The Miami Heat gave fight in that second game of this series. How on earth did an Eric Spoelstra, Pat Riley team give that kind of effort in 2 home games of a playoff series? And I know I'm a Cavs fan and I should be talking about how great the Cavs looked. But no, the story here, in my opinion, is the Cavs were expected to move on in this series anyway. The story is the Miami Heat and how pathetic they were. That was a joke. Tyler Hero was better than he was in Game 4. He was terrible in Game 4. Bam Adebayo showed some fight, but not much. And the rest of the Miami Heat, I get it, they're not good enough to compete with the Cavs. If you were to lose that game 107-83, I'm totally fine with a 24-point loss. That's somewhat of a fighting chance. No. You booked your flights to Cancun right before that game happened and you quit. And that's not how Miami Heat teams typically go. So do changes need to be made? Changes do need to be made in Miami. Does that mean Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra have to go? Of course it doesn't mean that. I think it's a little extreme to say Pat Riley's time is done. I think it is. Because I think Pat Riley has shown he's a great executive. I think he's going to be part of Miami Heat culture forever. I think Eric Spoelstra is the same way. If we were to make Eric Spoelstra the president of basketball operations, I think that's not necessarily the wrong move. If Pat Riley were to ever retire, I think Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra, that's a good partnership there. I think if you think of Miami Heat, it's still the culture. They still have good players on the roster. I still think Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo are good, but they need another star. Does that mean they should pursue Giannis Antetokounmpo or Damian Lillard this offseason? I think maybe. Damian Lillard's healthy, of course, but they need a star on that roster, and they need to collect some assets and draft some good role-playing players to play with that star alongside Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero. But this iteration of the Miami Heat is not going to be good enough for Heat culture. Now, they could be better, and Jimmy Butler, losing a player like that is a big deal. So I think if you're the Miami Heat, and I know I've talked about the Miami Heat, not the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I'm a Cavs fan, so I should be, but the Miami Heat, I think, they have a lot to work on for their future. But I blame the Miami Heat just being terrible in those 2 games as to the reason they really lost this playoff series. They showed fight in Game 2. They showed fight in the play-in tournament. And they gave us that crap in Games 3 and Games 4. I expected better as a Cavs fan from the Miami Heat. So I'll take the series win for what it's worth. I've never felt more satisfied after a Game 4 because that's how good the Cavs looked. But I'm going to put the Miami Heat on blast for this. I expected better. I expected this series to go 5 games. I picked the Cavs to win the series in 5 games. You have to win one of those home games with the culture you have. You can't make it easy on the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cleveland Cavaliers take on the Indiana Pacers in the next round. I mean, Indiana, to me, they've had a tremendous season. I think they were like 33-13, 32-13 after the All-Star break. Tyrese Halliburton, he didn't look as great as he did at the beginning of the season, but I kind of held my horses and said I think Tyrese Halliburton's going to explode by the time the end of the year happens. I think that's taken place. I think you look at Pascal Siakam, he's a great offensive player. They're a little bit better defensively than they were last year, but Indiana still doesn't play great defense, and that's where I think the Cavs are going to take advantage. And the Cavs can play defense, and against a good offense like Indiana, they're going to need to play good defense. Indiana's a good team. They're well coached. Rick Carlisle, a veteran in this league, knows what the hell he's doing, an NBA champion, turned the Indiana Pacers program around pretty quickly, and I think the Indiana Pacers are definitely going to bully a little bit around. I think they're going to win a game or 2 in this series. I don't see it going more than 6 games. I think if it's 2-2 at the 4-game mark, I think the Cavs would win the 6th game in Indiana and take, of course, the home game in Game 5. So I see this being a little bit of a deeper series. It's going to start on Sunday. Cavs get some rest. Indiana even getting a little bit of rest as well. I think that'll be good for both teams. I like this matchup. I think the Cavs do need to get pushed around a little bit before they get to play a team like the Boston Celtics, if the Boston Celtics end up coming out of their series against the Knicks or Pistons, which I think they're going to. And it's just a matter of when the Knicks win that series against the Pistons and how the Celtics match up with the Knicks. I think the Celtics are better than the Knicks or the Pistons. I really do. But having said that, when it comes to the Cavaliers and the Indiana Pacers, I think the Pacers, they could put it on you. And I think the Cavs need that. The Pacers offense is hot. They get hot hands. They shoot the ball really well. The Cavs shoot the ball really well, too. 3-point percentage was insane in that series against the Heat. So the Cavs could shoot the ball. The Pacers could shoot the ball. I think it's going to come down to letting the Pacers push you around a little bit to kind of test you for the Boston series. After that Miami Heat series, as I said, the Miami Heat kind of let the Cavs have it, but the Cavs showed some really good potential to compete with the Boston Celtics in the 7-game series based on what they showed us against the Miami Heat. I think they could do the same thing against Indiana. So I'm going to take the Cavs to win that series in 6 games. I think Indiana is good enough they're going to win 2. And I think the Cavs are going to have to do some really good adjustments. I think Halliburton is a guy you got to watch. I think Siakam, when he gets going, is a guy you got to watch. It's a good offensive team. Defensively, they're a lot better than they were last year, but they're not perfect. And I think the Cavs are going to exploit that a little bit more. So Cavs-Pacers, I think, is going to be a great series. I want to give a shout-out to the Milwaukee Bucks. That Damian Lillard injury looked tough. Tough way to end the season. I know they won the in-season tournament, but it's a bad situation around Giannis Antetokounmpo right now. I think Giannis and Dame can work together, and I honestly think Bucks leadership is a joke. Doc Rivers has got to go, guys. And I've been saying that all season long. And I'm not going to keep saying it over and over again, but I'm going to say it now that the season's over for them. Doc Rivers has got to go. He is not the NBA head coach he used to be. Doc Rivers has got to go. You got to fire him. If you're the Milwaukee Bucks, go get somebody else. Go hire Adrian Griffin back because you did him wrong to begin with. Go get Mike Budenholzer back for all I care. Doc Rivers has got to go. He can't coach in the NBA right now. No team should hire him. I think he should go back to the college ranks and work his way back up. Doc Rivers has got to go. He's not a good NBA head coach anymore. And I think there were times the Milwaukee Bucks last night could have won Game 5 and forced Game 6. And I think coaching was the reason. I don't think it was the faulty play of Giannis. I don't think it's Damian Lillard being absent. Doc Rivers has got to go. He's got to go. And the Bucks have more problems on the roster anyway, but Doc Rivers, I think, is a huge problem just within the organization. He is not the head coach he used to be. You got to get rid of Doc Rivers. You got to fire him. If I'm the Milwaukee Bucks, you got to make a move. That's just my thoughts on it. And then you look out west, as we talked about OKC and Memphis. Memphis fought in that sweep. They deserve a lot more credit than the Miami Heat. I trust where the Grizzlies are more so than where the Miami Heat are right now. And they fired a coach this year. But they have really good players in John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. Zach Edey looks like a good role player piece for the Memphis Grizzlies. So I like the Grizzlies' future more than the Heat future right now. And they still got a lot of work to do, but they fought in a lot of those games. So give the Memphis Grizzlies, even though they were swept, give them the benefit of the doubt that they fought against the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Thunder were just a way better team. And the Timberwolves going up 3-1 on the Lakers. I mean, the Lakers defensively are showing all their problems. I think Anthony Edwards is showing why he is as good as he is. Anthony Edwards, I think, is going to be dominating this league for a while. And imagine having a sweep against Kevin Durant and possibly 4 or 5 games against LeBron James and Luka Doncic and the Lakers right away. And I think Anthony Edwards was waiting for this moment with Luka, because last year the Mavericks just had their way with the T-Wolves in that series. This year Anthony Edwards is kind of showing he's arrived yet again. And if I'm anybody in the West right now, I don't necessarily know I want to face the T-Wolves. I don't want to face Golden State either. I think the Houston Rockets are showing that. But I don't know if I want anything to do with the T-Wolves right now. Anthony Edwards has kind of gotten going, and if I'm OKC even, you get the T-Wolves in the conference finals. If that ends up being the conference finals, I don't know if I want that. That scares me. And the Nuggets-Clippers series is still going deep. That's 3-2 Denver. That series I thought was going to go 7 games. I think I picked the Clippers to win that series. Clippers, to me, are showing their age a little bit again. Jamal Murray being a young player yesterday, getting the win for the Nuggets, essentially, with Jokic. But Jamal Murray went off. I think he was the X factor for Denver. That scares me a little bit about Denver, too. And they're going to get probably OKC if they... I mean, they will get OKC if they advance. OKC's just waiting on if it's the Clippers or the Nuggets. If OKC ends up getting the Clippers in that conference semifinal series, I think the Clippers are just too old to play against OKC. But if they get the Denver Nuggets, the Nuggets are going to make that a good series. Timberwolves, if they advance over the Lakers and they get Golden State, which looks like they're going to get, it looks like it's going to be Golden State and Minnesota. I like the T-Wolves to win that series. I mean, I liked Houston to beat the Warriors anyway, because I still think age is going to be a factor in some of the stars that Golden State has. But Golden State has been on another level since they got Jimmy Butler, so they deserve some props for that. And I think if they end up advancing and getting the T-Wolves in the second round, that's going to be one hell of a defensive series. But I still think the T-Wolves have the best player on the floor between them and Golden State if that ends up being a series. Now, if the Lakers turn things around, come back from that 3-1 deficit, which I don't think they're going to at this point, but if they do, then I like their odds against the Warriors at this point. And if Houston turns things around, I like Houston actually against the Lakers, but I don't like them against the T-Wolves. So to me, that bracket out there is going to be really interesting, and the West was highly competitive this year, outside of OKC. I still think the Thunder are the final favorites right now. If I were to pick anybody out West, to me, they're the most complete team, and the youth is on their side. The Nuggets have good youth, too. Golden State, still kind of like a retirement home, even though Houston's got the youth, but they have the experience right now. I don't want to play Golden State, and I don't want to play Minnesota. And if that ends up being the next round series, T-Wolves, Warriors, I would like that series. But I would pick the T-Wolves to probably win it 6 or 7 games, just because youth is still on their side compared to Golden State's. But it's kind of wild out West right now, and I think it could literally go anywhere. But I would still say OKC right now, by a long shot, would be the favorite to come out of the West. Although the Nuggets can make things interesting. I don't want to rule the Nuggets out, because they do have who I think is the best player in basketball, Nikola Jokic. And he's a difference maker. And if Jamal Murray goes off like he did last night, with Nikola Jokic on the floor already, then the Denver Nuggets can make some noise. So there's a lot of teams you can't rule out in the West. Right now, though, if I were to say anybody, I don't take the Rockets that seriously. I'm at a point where I can't take the Lakers that seriously. Obviously, the Grizzlies have been swept. So if there's anyone to take seriously, it would be OKC, Denver, possibly the Clippers, I want to say, but to me in this series, it doesn't look like it so far. It did at the end of the season. So I'll say OKC, Denver, Minnesota, and Golden State. Those are the 4 teams right there I think are going to be advancing, and I think can make some real noise in the playoffs. An OKC-Denver series, I think, could really go either way when I think about it. I think OKC should be favored, but that can go either way. In Minnesota, Golden State, an experienced Golden State should probably win that series, but I think in terms of youth and who has the better superstar right now, there's no doubt it's the Timberwolves. The Rockets is a great story. The Rockets have a great coach in Ime Udoka. They have great talent. Şengün is a great player. Jalen Green's a great player. They have great veterans like Fred VanVleet and Steven Adams. But the Rockets are just a great story. They're not ready to really elevate their game yet. I think they're a year or two away from being one of the top dogs in the NBA. The Lakers, this series was a disaster for them so far. And because they're in a 3-1 hole, I can't trust them, even if they come out of the 3-1 hole, to do that against somebody else. I just can't. The Clippers, it's age. I've been saying that all year. I just don't like the age of the superstar players they have. And at some point, I thought it was going to bite them. They ended up having a tremendous end to the season, but I think that may pan out in the playoffs, not going their way. But the West is definitely more competitive than the East right now. But I still think the East, when you stack the teams up, has the better players and is overall the better conference. But right now, it's really the Cavs and the Celtics. With the West, I really don't know who it's going to be. I really don't. So we'll find out. We will find out as these series continue. But right now, I think Golden State and Minnesota are going to get the closeouts at some point, just a matter of when. I think Denver is going to close in on the Clippers in Game 6 or 7. I would say probably Game 7. I think that series goes 7 games. But, yeah, the West is definitely the more mysterious conference as opposed to the East, where I think we know it's going to be Cavs-Celtics and who just gets by. All right, let's wrap things up with some Major League Baseball. My Guardians getting a big win over the Minnesota Twins yesterday, 2-1, thanks to a walk-off from Slam Zardo. He's been tremendous this season, but the Guardians had a bad weekend. That game against the Boston Red Sox, where they lost 13-3, was atrocious. Logan Allen was awful in that game. The bullpen was even worse. The hitting was awful all the way up until about the 6th, 7th inning. The bats haven't really come to life for the Guardians in the last couple days. The Minnesota game was even worse, in my opinion, even though it was 11-1. Gavin Williams was awful. I expect a lot better from him. The bullpen didn't hold themselves together well either. Gavin Williams gave up 4 runs right off the rip. Tanner Bybee pitched his ass off last night and gave the Guardians some good breathing life. But other than that, to me right now with the Guardians, it's going to be about stabilizing the rotation, getting the guys that we know are good to be consistently good, and getting the best bats out there often as possible. We know Kwani can do what he can do. We know Jose is Jose. We know Kyle Manzardo has proven himself to possibly be a good replacement for Josh Naylor, which we shouldn't have had to replace in the first place because you could have Manzardo batting 5th. But granted, that's possible. Manzardo's on pace for 30 home runs if he keeps it up. And I think it's going to be one of those things where Manzardo is going to really make us happy with all the home runs he hits, and then he's going to strike out a bunch, and we're going to be saying, what the hell are we doing? Be patient. I think Manzardo is going to pan out. Obviously, Gabriel Arias has been really impressive. I think he's turned a lot of our heads. Angel Martinez has shown some good stuff, but then he's also gone cold at times. I still think Angel Martinez has got some potential as well, but I really like Gabe Arias out of that crew. John Kenty Noel, to me, the power is there. I see it, but it's not consistent. The guy strikes out like mad, and that's very concerning. Brian Rocchio, I think he's a guy that could turn it off as the season goes on. I think May be his month. He's going to be a good bat, I think, come the summer. I think it's just going to be tapping into that. Bo Naylor is shown to be slightly better maybe than he was last year. Same with Austin Hedges, but Bo Naylor's still in a make or break year. Austin Hedges is a great clubhouse guy. It's impressive he's already tied his home run total from last year. So, we all know Austin Hedges is a great clubhouse guy. I love Austin Hedges personally, but Austin Hedges, the offensive player, yeah. But granted, I don't think we're expecting that from Austin Hedges to begin with. So, the pitching rotation needs to stabilize. Obviously, when Bieber gets back later this season, that's going to help. Gavin Williams was a lot better than when he pitched against Minnesota in that first game. That concerns me. Luis Ortiz, I like how he's playing against the bad teams. I don't like how he's playing against the good teams. That's concerning. Tanner Bybee, I think, needs to stabilize, but he should be fine. He's obviously going to be your ace. Logan Allen, I've been done with. He showed more promise this year than he did last, I'll say that. But after that Boston Red Sox game, no. I think the big thing when it comes to the Guardians in particular is Cade Smith closing out some of these games. I think that was a big thing for the Guardians going into last week. I mean, he closed out 2 of those games against the Yankees. Then they moved Clase in the Boston Red Sox win that we got, the one win we got of those 3 games. They put him in the 8th inning, and then they put Cade Smith as a closer in the 9th. And I think Clase felt more settled in, knowing that he wasn't closing the game. And I think Cade Smith, he did let 2 runners on base, but he was able to close out the deal. It might be time to make Cade Smith the closer. It really may. And he showed last week when he got 3 outs on 4 pitches against the New York Yankees, big bad baseball, that he could be ready for this moment. So we'll see. I think the Guardians right now, they're in good position to be competitive. I really like what the Detroit Tigers are doing right now. Skubal looks lights out again. Their offense is still not perfect, but it's coming together much more than the Guardians' offense has. And they're incredibly well managed under A.J. Hinch, who's been there and done that, despite him being a cheater. I mean, Tigers are scaring me right now. If I were to pick anyone to come out of the American League, it might be the Detroit Tigers as a dark horse candidate. Because the Yankees, to me, are too streaky defensively. The Boston Red Sox were in some really bad holes earlier this year. But they're figuring it out slowly, and I thought the Red Sox will. The Orioles, I think, should be a lot better than where they are right now. But they're not, and so that's problematic. Kansas City, I thought, would be a lot better than where they are right now, and they're not showing any signs of getting a lot better. And their bullpen is pretty pathetic, too. That's a problem for them. And then you look out west. I mean, Seattle's had some impressive wins, but I don't think 14-0 wins against the Miami Marlins are going to be a habit for the Seattle Mariners. But they can pitch. They really can pitch. The Houston Astros, they're still kind of the best organization in that division, so maybe them. The American League's kind of a wide open door. As you look at the National League, I think it's mainly all Mets and Dodgers right now. Frankie Lindor, how many walk-offs is that guy getting? Mets fans went from hating that guy to loving that guy. And in Cleveland, we loved him here until he obviously went to the Mets. But, Mets fans had a love-hate relationship with Lindor, and now it's paying off for them. They obviously have Alonso. The pitching rotation still needs to stabilize a little bit. Juan Soto, kind of off to a slow start, but will pick off in the summer. The Mets have potential. The Braves have been a disaster to open the year, but I think slowly but surely we'll figure things out. You look at the Central, that's kind of a mess. I mean, the Cubs are the best team out of those 5, but not by much. They just spent more money than the rest of them. And then you look at the Dodgers, and they look like the juggernaut right now. But give the Giants props. They've been looking impressive. Give the Padres props. They started off 7-0, and they've been essentially hot all year long. And give anybody but Colorado. Arizona had a big night on Saturday. I mean, 4 home runs by 1 player, if you think about it. They still lost that game to the Braves somehow, but the D-backs have good offensive players and talent. So, to me, I think the NL is still pretty competitive, but I would say the Dodgers, Mets, and Padres are kind of the juggernauts right now. But, we're not even in the dog days of summer yet. There's a lot of baseball to be played, and early on in the year, a lot of these things could flip. But we'll just have to find out. That's today's edition of Raw Takes with Andrew Hody. If you like what I had to say, make sure to check out the next week's edition of the show. We'll have it either on next Tuesday or Wednesday, maybe on Monday. We do the show once a week, so make sure to stay tuned for that, covering all the big headlines in sports. We'll have more on the NBA playoffs, more on NFL free agency and how that pans out, but we're going to try to steer into baseball mode more now that it's coming closer to summertime. Obviously, the basketball is getting down to the wire in terms of the NBA playoffs, so it's going to be all NBA playoffs and baseball from here on out until we really get some more football highlights. So that's my thoughts on the draft. That's my thoughts on the playoffs in the NBA and where Major League Baseball starts off. Have a good one, everybody. We'll be back next week for some more Raw Takes.